Andy Allen, how are you?
Is that
Welcome,
Alina?
everybody. Welcome.
Good morning.
You're getting a good turnout, Andy. I mean, this is great. Good morning and welcome to Playing to Win. This is something we started this year, actually, Andy. We started this year because the market's so crazy, right? And we're like, it's such a different competitive market. And you, my dear, have seen many markets and have, been through
Watch it. Be
right?
nice. Be nice.
Oh, in a good way. I mean, like you're like the Jedi level.
Sure.
I meant it like we've got a Jedi on the call today.
It's amazing that I'm still alive at this point, isn't it?
Stop it. That's not what I meant. What I meant is, like I talk about Andy all the time. I started in Nevada with my real estate license, and the market there reminds me of the market here 15 years later, but for totally different reasons, right? Because it's a different market today. And now you've built quite a business. So I know you have a lot of repeat and referral, but the agents that are out in the market today that don't have, a lot of experience, the skill that they'll learn now will serve them well their whole career, right?
No question. This is a down, so when the market's on fire like this, we're all kind of created equal. In a tough market, people have to reach out to really great agents to make things happen.
Yeah.
In this kind of market, everyone is a great agent. And it doesn't take, look, in the market where I work, if the average price point's say $1.5 million, someone can sell a house for $1.5 million that I could have sold for 1.7, but still that seller will be elated and think they're the greatest agent ever because they only expected to get 1.3. Right. So everyone's a hero in this market. But the flip side of that is it's a very tough market because there's no inventory and for all the reasons we already know.
Exactly. And so, Andy, I'm going to just feature you because I want to make you big and show the world who you are. You're an awesome guy. And I don't at all mean old because I'm right there with you. What I mean is you're just so respected and and you couldn't be a nicer guy. You're one of the first people I sat down and met with when I was full-time North. And I just loved getting to know you, your story. And can you just introduce yourself a little bit, like how long you've been doing this, a little bit of your background?
Yep. So I've been in real estate for 30 years, the entire time at Keller Williams. When I started Keller Williams, I think there were maybe 2 offices. Gary was always in the office, so I still consider Gary to be my friend. Recently, he built a gym in his backyard. We went back and forth on equipment that he should get for it. So it's different. I go to convention or somewhere and Gary walks in the room and everyone thinks, oh my God, it's Gary Keller. And I think, it's just Gary.
Right.
The guy used to always be around.
Yeah.
I started my career, first of all, I had competed in bodybuilding before this. And so when I got out of school, my parents are the ones who told me, you got to do something more than lay in the sun and eat 6 meals and go to the gym. This is unacceptable. So I got a real estate license. Back then, in order to go into the office, you had to have a sport coat and a tie at a minimum. I'm talking about to check my mail. I wore a 56 coat then, and I had a 33-inch waist, so I had to have clothes made. So once I spent money on making the clothes, then I thought, I may as well try this real estate thing because I was invested. What I realized very quickly was the discipline that had helped me in bodybuilding was very transferable to pretty much anything else in life. And so as long as I got up early and I worked hard and I did what I'm supposed to do and I had a strategy and I followed my plan, then every year I just did more business. So it was, and frankly, when I got into this business, I don't mean this to be mean, but when I looked around at the people who are the top producers, I thought, if these people are wildly successful, I can rule the world in this industry.
Exactly. Yeah.
The bar is so low for entry.
Yeah.
We tend to make this harder than what it is. It really isn't that hard.
Yeah. Andy, I've still heard that in my 15 years of being, in leadership with Keller Williams is people are either coming into the business because somebody was so terrible and they want to raise the bar, or they were so inspired from a really great agent, right? It's one or the other. And yeah. So
I think for me, what I always heard from people, you have a lot of people who are working a regular job and they show up late all the time. They get fired and they think, the heck with that, I'll be my own boss. So what's the easiest place to go be your own boss? Real estate. These people are not good employees. They're going to be a wretched boss when it comes to policing themselves. Right. And so, they used to say 3 out of 4 people in real estate fail within the first year. And people would look at that and go, oh my God, that's demoralizing. I looked at that and went, that's amazing. There's a revolving door, and that's who I will be competing against for most of my career. That's a real, if you look at it differently, it's a really great thing. The competition, you don't have to be exceptional to do really well in real estate. You just have to give the effort.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And you have built such an extraordinary business in those 30 years. And you told me there was a year that you were like in the top, was it the top number one? Were you in all of Keller Williams, or the top couple?
Number one.
Number
Number
one.
one at Keller Williams, and in the Wall Street Journal, we were number 15 in the nation, my team.
That's incredible. And how many years have you been in the business when you achieved that? Do you remember?
So about 15, maybe.
About 15 in. Okay. That's
Yeah.
incredible. That's
14.
incredible. That's incredible. Well, you know, the theme is, so you're competitive because you've been a bodybuilder, you're an athlete, you're very disciplined in what you eat, you're super healthy. I see that still. Playing to win is our theme, right? Because when January hit, I felt like, you know, 2020 was a lot of playing not to lose, right? In many ways, not just real estate, just people's livelihoods changed overnight, right? With the isolation and COVID and everything. So I said, let's make 2021 the year we play to win. Because as you know, as a competitive, you know, business owner, athlete, you know that the mindset is you can't win something if you're playing just defense all the time and putting out fires. You have to be playing offense. And that
Absolutely.
to win mentality is very different, right? So that's why I started this series, is playing to win, on that mentality of people like you that are really achieving, and it doesn't matter the market that you're in, honestly, because it's a decision you make. So what does playing to win look like to you, Andy?
So for my entire career, I started out feeling like I have to have balance. Very early on, I met some people who were great at real estate sales, who had miserable lives, and they were just angry, ugly kind of people. And I realized quickly, okay, well, that doesn't work. When you're training to grow muscle, you have to rest in between. You have to give it days to rest. You have to have balance. So from the very beginning, and I think Gary taught us probably early on in my first 5 years about a life pie chart. And so I've used the life pie my entire life now as an adult. So playing to win to me means balance. It means I have lots of time for my family. It means I have lots of time for the gym. It means I every week for the last 2.5 years, I drive to San Antonio 1 day a week to have lunch with my parents. And because we're in this industry, I can do that. Always, when my kids were growing up, I coached every sport: baseball, basketball, football. Kaylee, if she's playing a sport I didn't know, I still coached it. And all that time, this is during the time where I was ranked number 15 in the nation. And yet I'd be at Little League practices 3 times a week. Again, if you value your time, other people will value your time. That's not to say I told people I got Little League 3 times a week. I would just say, let me check my schedule. Oh, I'm already booked that night, and I'm booked this night, and I'm booked this night, but how about? And I'd move them. People want to work with people who are busy. So to tell them you're booked, they assume it's business, and that's okay. That's, you know, I went with that.
I love that. And that, but what you're role modeling at a very high level is that life by design, right? Is that balanced life. And I agree with you. You know, it's funny how Gary always says, like, if you want something done, ask a busy person, right? Because here you are, number 1 in all of Keller Williams at the time, number 15 in the whole country, regardless of companies. And you're doing Little League or whatever you're coaching, right? All these different things you're coaching, you're making it happen, and you're still there for your family. I think that's what most real estate agents think they're signing up for when they get into real estate. And 5 years in, they realize they're getting divorced, they're unhealthy or whatever, because all of those personal things that matter are at the wayside. So I love your answer on that.
I credit Gary. I credit Gary for a lot of that, because early on with our mastermind group of the top agents around the country, he was the one who said that. You know, every year going into the new year, he'd have us pull out a calendar, which back then was paper. And he would say, write in all your vacations, write in a date night every week or 2 date nights a week, write in all the stuff you have, everything you want to do, all the trips, all of everything, write it in. Then he'd say, when you get to the end of the month or the next month, write in all the days you want to take off, write in every lunch you want to have with a friend, write in all of the stuff, everything that makes it a perfect life for you. And the rest of your time, go to work to support that life. That was brilliant, because we always started with us first, having an amazing life, as opposed to sales. We got to have more sales.
And then what happens is people then look up and they didn't plan that time, so it didn't happen. They didn't take
Exactly.
that family vacation. They didn't go on that trip or that
Yeah.
date with their spouse, right? And
Yeah.
that is so, I love that you took that at such an early point. What do you think, how about the market right now? Because again, you and I have been through a few different markets in our careers. What do you think is the most important thing an agent can do right now in this market in Austin, Texas, right now?
So I think the right answer is you have to always know more than your client, especially in a market like this. And you can't be wishy-washy when you talk to clients. You can't say the market could go up or the market could go down and give them no guidance. If you went to your doctor and they said, okay, well, this could be something that could kill you, or in a couple of days you could be fine, I just don't know. That's
Right.
not an acceptable answer, right? We're professionals, we're very well paid. What we should study before you go out with a buyer, if you know you're looking at a certain price point, know the inventory, know how many have gone under contract, know how much above list price they're selling for, so that when you speak to them, you can educate them and you can speak intelligently. If you get their respect, even if the offer doesn't get accepted, they still don't look to blame and go, we have the wrong realtor. And then the other thing you have to do, always you have to do, is you have to be a cheerleader. In this market, you have to be a cheerleader for the buyers. In a softer market, we are continually being a cheerleader and a babysitter for our sellers. We can have a seller whose house hasn't been shown in 2 weeks and they think the sky is falling. We can have sellers who we get feedback from the showing and the people said, no, they hated it. It's the wrong colors. It smells bad. It is.
Right.
It's our job to convey that message in a positive way that keeps them pumped up,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Done all kinds of things over the years that I promise you other people don't do,
Yeah.
just because I know my sellers need it.
Yeah. I love
I had Kaylee, my daughter, I paid her $100 at one house because the house was a little isolated away from Vandergrift, but it was Vandergrift High School. And I knew the people were coming back for a second visit and had kids. I paid my daughter $100 to wear her Vandergrift softball shirt and jog up and down the street. So when they pulled off, they'd see a kid in a Vandergrift shirt. Look, I'm in sales and my job is to be very purposeful. It is not to go, oh, great, they're showing up. There's a lockbox there. I hope it goes well. If that were the case, I wouldn't have near the numbers I have.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. And I love what you said about being the cheerleader for the buyers right now, because there's so much to that. And we'll dig a little deeper on that, but it's like, it's challenging for a buyer right now, but it is just
Yes,
the
it
game.
is.
It's just the game we're in. It is what it is, right? There's no
Yep.
emotion about it, but being that cheerleader and encourager is so key. And I love that you said that. All right. So what do you think you're doing differently?
Well, for me, I always go deep into knowing area, having area knowledge. Okay, so if you look at my career, I've been a farming agent my entire career. We have always learned that it starts with listings. And if you have listings, then you can kind of control your life more easily. And listings are what bring buyers, right? So I've always been a farming agent. In order to be a successful farming agent, I need to know more about the areas where I farm than anyone else. And when I show up at someone's house to talk to them about it, I need to impress upon them. And in this market, it is equally important when I have a consultation with a buyer. We go out, I get a phone call from a buyer who says, look, we only want to spend up to 1.7 and the prices are going crazy. And we've tried to do this with another agent. It hasn't worked. Can you help us? And so I talk about the relationships I have with sellers. I talk about how many houses I've sold. I talk about what I can do behind the scenes to try to find things. But I also talk about how quickly I am prepared to move the minute it hits the market. And I tell them no one will understand values better than me. So I'll be able to counsel you on what's too high, what's not too high to offer. So that in the end, these people look and go, we win by using Andy, right?
Yeah.
So some of that is confidence, but most of that confidence comes from the fact that I know my product.
Yeah, and you see that, right? And you really see that. What is your average sales price right now? You mentioned it's over $1 million, right?
Yes. Yeah. So I have 5 houses over $1 million that have closed so far this year. I have 3 closing next month. And I have a tsunami of them coming, which is a good point to mention. So I think it's worth mentioning that I have started getting a lot of calls from people who are just talking about cashing out because the market's on fire. So I met with my stager the other day. I've got a house that's right at 4 million we're staging. And she told me she can't keep up. She's going on 6 staging consultations a day, where before, if she did 6 a week, she would have been thrilled. She's going on 6 a day. What that tells you is there's a whole lot of inventory that is coming. Sales, what we do, this is based pretty simply on supply and demand. There has been a massive demand. There will remain a large demand, but we've had no supply. When that supply changes, and a whole lot of these people are selling just because they look and go, it's time to get out. I've had a number of people who are saying they're selling big houses this year because next year, instead of capital gains being at 20%, they're going to pay 39%. Even that's entering into it. So if you start to look, and all these people who aren't super motivated to move, but are finally going, you know what? I got so much money that I can pull out of this house right now. It can be life-changing for me. We'll go rent something. We'll figure it out.
Right.
Just know this is supply and demand. We as realtors have very short memories that market's correct. All market's correct.
Yes.
And so for those of you who are sitting out and haven't lived through these things and you go, no, but this is different because we have every reason to believe because Tesla's here and this one's coming and this, all of those things are wonderful and they're true. It doesn't matter. The market will correct.
Yeah.
It's supply and demand.
Right.
And at some point, interest rates can go up. The stock market can take a huge hit. We have all these different reasons. Some big employer here can have layoffs and it hits. I'm just telling you,
Yeah.
I've lived through these things over and over. There will be a change coming.
Right. So you're in this window right now, right? So it's like you want to play all in right now, guys. You know, there's no guarantee this kind of market's going to continue forever.
Exactly. So to answer back to your question, one of the things that I'm doing is I'm going back to a lot of the people that maybe talked to me 5 years ago and said, we don't want to move. We're not that motivated. But I'm going back and going, hey, when last we talked, your value was this. It's now this. And so those discussions, in some cases, it's just a year or two ago, but I'm picking up the phone going, I'm just calling to tell you I've rerun numbers. Here's where you are today.
Right.
Because that in and of itself is enough for many of these people to go, holy cow, we'll get the landscapers out here. Let's get moving.
Right. I mean, some of those, Andy, are just from the last summer, right? Some of them
Absolutely.
are just like the prices since 2021, what we've seen is increase. It's like that hockey stick, right? Where it's really just, it's crazy. Victor had a quick question about the capital gains, what you just mentioned about from the 20 to 39%. Could you explain that a little bit?
Just that's the new administration. What they have said is they're doing away with capital gains being at 10, 15, and 20% based on your income.
Okay.
So if you're a highest end earner, your capital gains are at 20% when you sell your house.
Yeah.
What they have said is they're doing away with that. So now it's just going to be wherever your tax bracket is. So the highest tax bracket is 39%. So for many of the houses that I sell, these people look and go, the difference that I'm paying in taxes from 20 to 39%, I'm almost paying twice as much.
Yeah.
You have athletes, you have celebrities nationwide who are talking about selling this year, just for that reason.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you. And Victor said, wow, thank you. All right. So how are you educating? Let's talk about the buyers a little bit. You're with your buyers and you want to educate them on playing to win in this market. What are you telling them when somebody says, I want to buy, this is how much I have? Like, what are you doing differently to prepare them to play to win in this market?
Well, the first thing is you set them up to fail.
Okay.
You set them up so that very clearly you can say, and it's going to be, this is very much price point driven. So if you're in a lower price point and they're getting, 30 to 100 offers on a house, I'd be very clear with them about that. Here's what's happening. And again, based on if I know where they're going to buy, then I would have my numbers together and say, over the last 2 months, here's how much above they've gone. So if you're a buyer at 500,000, for instance, and things are selling for 20% above, then we know really we should be looking around the $400,000 price point in order to find something where you can win, right? That seems to make sense. If you're not
working that buffer. Yeah,
if you're not doing that, then you're taking a $500,000 buyer out to look at a $500,000 house that they have no chance of buying, right? And then I have the dialogue with them that says, look, this may not be the best time. We're going to be extremely competitive. No one has the crystal ball. I can't tell you when it changes, but I can tell you it will change. And when it changes, there will be a lot of inventory and sellers will be more negotiable and prices will soften. All of that will come. Exactly when, we don't know, but that's a dialogue you have to have with them. If they choose, well, then I'll just extend my lease for a year. Well, the great news is as the market shifts, whenever that is, when that market starts to shift and they see inventory, even if they're only 4 or 5 months into their lease, look, the money they have saved by not buying today will more than make up for the money they're going to have to spend to finish out their lease. So you have a customer who will look at you and go, you're a rock star.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to close me on something, you gave me all the data and you let me make an informed decision.
Well, and you just nailed it on the head. You gave them the data, and there's no emotion in any of that, right? There's no right or
No.
wrong pressure. It's like, here's what it is, right? This is what it is. And think about somebody, if they want a $500,000 house, but they don't have 200,000 cash sitting in the bank, account that they're willing to contribute to that, then they need to be looking at, 350 or whatever. I love that you work that into that. Okay. So is it different you do a lot of luxury, a lot of, like you said, your average sales price is well over $1 million. Is it different in that price point, the conversation?
Sure, because it's not as competitive. It's competitive, but what's interesting is about 3 weeks ago for a client, I ran numbers. I had a bunch of big stuff coming. And so I ran numbers and I looked to say $1 million to $1.5 million. Okay, over the last 60 days, how many of them are getting multiple offers? Wow, a lot of them getting multiple offers. $1.5 million to $2 million, far fewer. And by multiple offers, the way I knew was if they're going under contract in 5 days or less,
Right.
I assume that's a multiple offer, quick deal.
Sure.
Once you got over 2 million, very few of them. Once you got over 3 million, you would have to count on it being a normal real estate market. So for instance, on my big ones that I have coming, I'm counseling my people that what you read in the paper is 100% true.
Yeah.
If you're buying a house for $400,000 to $500,000. What your children are experiencing, buying their first house, is not what you're going to experience selling your house for over $4 million. They're still, look, even though they're however many people there are who can afford a $4 million house, a whole lot of those as a percentage are never going to buy a $4 million house. So we don't have people lined up down the street to come through the $4 million house. Certain price points, certain price points, yes. Certain areas of town, yes. Certain areas of town, maybe even the 4 million if it happens to have this and that. But the truth of the matter is, you have to set up your client for a worst case, because if you don't, and you don't go through and educate them, this is what I said in the beginning, you have to know more than them. So if you don't educate them, then what happens is you put the house on at 4.5 million, and 2 weeks later they look at you like, what's the matter with you? I read the paper. This thing should have had 20 offers by now. This is all about us knowing our industry, our business. And again, that's what they pay us to do.
Exactly. I love that, which leads right into the sellers, so the conversation, do you have it? So you just explained that, the 4 million plus, that conversation looks very different, right? Than the $400,000 seller,
Yep.
which I don't know if you take much of those, but how are you preparing them that you haven't mentioned? How are you preparing your sellers differently for this?
So let's say in a price point that is kind of more where, okay, yeah, we still could get multiple offers, but the market could shift. So more like $1.5 million for me. Okay. So in that price range, every discussion I have is, this is based on inventory. I've done this 30 years. I've done it at a very high level. I've only done it here and I've seen multiple cycles. This will change. First of all, you have to make them understand, because sometimes they just think, oh, well, it's doing this and it's going to do this forever.
Yeah.
But and by the way, my experience is when it shifts, there is this feeling out there that it's a very gradual transition and it's really nice. And so if 100% of the houses sell now, well, then for the next few months, 90% will sell in a week. And for the next few months, 80% will sell in a week with multiple offers. That's not how it works. Inventory changes very quickly. And when inventory changes, then if this was your high price point and it's bumped up to here because there's been no inventory, we give up this almost immediately. And so for those people who don't understand that, they're going to be very upset with you when they go, well, I thought we were going to get 20% above list price. And now they're disappointed because they got list price or 5% above.
Yeah.
Again, this is where we have to educate them. I don't take response. I can't know when the market's going to shift. I know it will shift.
Yeah.
I know it's coming. I know what factors can influence that shift. And so all I can do is educate them and say, look, right now, if it's $1.5 million in 2 months, the way this market is, it could be 165, it could be 169. But the flip side of that is, in 2 months, the $200,000 that you've made in the last 6 months, if we have a lot of inventory, that 200,000 could immediately be gone.
Right.
You need to make the decision because it's
Right.
your money.
Right.
Is this the time, and where do you want to be in terms of price?
Right, exactly. Are you finding that sellers, like it's a great script or conversation that you can have with your sellers that would be in that price point where there's multiple offers and stuff like that to
Absolutely.
pull money
So
out?
they are incredibly, I find that they are incredibly appreciative of the fact that you give them all of the data
Yeah,
and you show. Like, I went to a broker's house yesterday who called me to say, look, dude, you do all the business in this neighborhood. I'm having a hard time understanding values. We're thinking maybe of moving or maybe of building a guest house. Could you, I'd never met him, but he's a real estate broker. And so I went out to educate him. And I said, look, if you go on the market, show it yourself. Here's your active, here's your pending, and here's your recent. These are the only three that you need to stick with. If you go with these three, you could probably push 1.8 to 1.85. Okay. That's where the market is in this at this instant. If we were 2 months ago, you were 1.65. That's how much it changed.
wow.
And so if he's a broker who doesn't understand how to determine the value of his own home in his own neighborhood,
Yeah,
then how can we expect a normal homeowner to really grasp it if we don't break it down for them?
right, right. And that's where I think people realize there is no crystal ball, because when it changes, it will change quickly. And we
Yep.
and I love that, because that's why they're like, oh, should I hold it? It's like they think like like the stock market, really. That's how people are looking at the value of their homes, as they should, because there's no guarantee in 2
Yep.
months it'll be another $200,000 value, right?
Exactly.
There's no guarantee of that, because
Yep.
we don't know that, right? You can just tell. I
Yep.
love that.
I tell the story, Cecilia, who works for me and has for years. A couple years ago, she bought a DR Horton home as an investment in Hutto. Her tenant was coming up, I don't know, a month and a half ago. We talked about that she's going to re-rent it. And we said, let's run numbers and see what it is. I think she paid $230.
Yeah.
We're under contract at 360 something thousand in 2 years, where she's had tenants in there those 2 years. So I look at that opportunity and go, look, there's a massive opportunity for people. And by the way, so we are real estate salespeople, right? We can have a big month and make a ton of money, and all of that's wonderful. But for people who are not in our shoes,
Yeah.
how long would it take them to make $100,000+ that they can put in savings? How long would it take them to save $100,000 if they make a certain amount of money per month? Right?
Right.
Life changing. That's if we understand our industry better than they, we should be able to talk to people and say, here's some food for thought.
Yeah.
You've been in your house X amount of time. You have this much equity built up in it. You've lived in it over 2 years. The first 500,000 for a couple is tax free. You could sell right now, go out and rent something in the short term, being let's do it for a year. At some point, we know the market shifts.
Right.
When the market shifts, let's let the inventory grow. Let's come back out and let's buy something at a different price.
Right.
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 If we were counseling people, like if this were a family member of mine, I would tell them that.
Yeah.
I would help them. For Cecilia, I love Cecilia. I help her. Yeah, I want her to do really well.
Right.
Right. So if we would do the same for our clients, think how popular we would be.
Right. And that's such a fun conversation, Andy, right? That's such a fun conversation, because you are the expert, right? And they need you for that.
Absolutely.
And think about this state of, and this is nothing against Americans. I'm American. I'm proud of our country, but we're not usually financially sound, and we don't learn financials as we grow. You learn that in different ways as an adult, right? And so
Yeah.
a lot of people, a lot of Americans have a lot of credit card debt, don't have any money in it, any kind of savings. So this could become a real opportunity for people to get ahead of that if they.
And this is where we are the experts, right? We understand it. When they don't feel well, they go to the doctor. They're reading in the paper, values are up, but what does that mean to them?
Right.
They don't know exactly what that means.
Yeah.
When you break it down and go, here's what that can mean. And by the way, because you've lived here 2 years, that money is tax-free. This is what you're putting in your bank. And you tell me, does that change your life or does it not? Does it make it worthwhile?
Yeah.
But the best I would bet you, I could pick a neighborhood where the houses are 300,000 to 500,000. I could go knocking doors, have all my data in hand, and talk to people and talk to them, trying to help them, not trying to make a sale, but truly trying to educate them and go, look, you got 2 kids here. You can walk away with this much money, put it in the bank. It could be invested in this. It could earn this for you. And that took care of the kids' college. Oh, and by the way, we're going to keep X amount over here to use as the down payment for when the market adjusts, so that you still are going to go out and buy another house.
Right.
Right. That to me,
Yeah.
that's That's being great at what we do.
I love that. That is so good. That's so good. Okay. Last thing I'm going to ask, and then I'm going to open it up because at about 10:30, I like to open it up for them to ask on the second half. A last question. You've said a lot of great things already, Andy, but what do you think you've said you're really good at the data, but what are you really good at? I see what you're good at, but what do you think has made you so successful?
People. Two things. I am incredibly competitive. I mean, to a fault. I mean, to where it's probably not healthy. I am that competitive. So when I walk into an environment, I look around, and if somebody is doing exceptional things, then I think, why on earth wouldn't I be doing that? When I got into real estate, I did that. There was a big agent out of Arizona. Every time he'd walk in the room, he was a former baseball player, he was 6'5", the air would come out of the room. So I look at him and I go, okay, I'm going to beat him in 2 years. I was at 30 million, he was at 65, and I went, 2 years, I'm going to crush him. That's my deal. Why? Because he's a person and I'm a person. He doesn't have anything on me, right? So and all I knew was, no matter who I would be talking to, he'd walk in and everyone would go, oh my God. Like it was such a big deal to everyone when he was there. So the next year.
Gary Keller now, how you look at other people look at Gary Keller.
Exactly. So the next year, I went from 30 something to 65, right where he was, because his numbers didn't change.
Okay.
Next year, I did 103, he did 67. Next year, we were on panels, and every panel we'd be on, he'd say, I got to come see your operation. I got to figure out what you're doing. You got to help me. Well, my answer was, he had helped me. Just because I could look and go, he put up big numbers. Anyone listening to this should go, wow, look at the numbers Andy put up. If you want to have a big team, our best year, we did 566 sales in Austin.
Wow.
566.
I was dying to ask you this because I think you actually you definitely hold the record for the North office, 100%.
Yeah, so 566 units. If you want a number to beat, there's your number to beat.
Okay.
566 units. As I remember,
was it
though it varied in salespeople, but I remember if you looked at the average, we had 4 listing agents, we had 7 buyer agents. So 455 units with 11 agents, 4 full-time staff, and a buyer agent manager and listing agent manager. That's how we run the business.
Amazing. Amazing. And I know Victor Nino has big goals, so I'm sure he's writing that number down right now.
Go, Victor. Look, I thought about it a few years ago, ramping up and building a huge team again and conquering the world. And what I realized was I don't have the patience for people anymore. Like, I really like people, but I don't think I like them as much as I used to like them.
Yeah.
So I think it's easier to go sell big houses, and I do great, and I'm happy, and I have a ton of free time. Yeah. So you ask for me, the differentiators, incredibly competitive, and I have always liked people, right? So when you call me, if you say, Andy, we got this house, wherever, whatever, and I'm going to interview 10 agents, I promise you in my mind, I'm thinking this is awesome because 9 people are going to be devastated when they hear I got it. In my mind, I already won. I know I'm going to win. And I go out there, and my job is to convince the seller that I am as good as I believe myself to be. And so if I'm that well prepared, I have the statistics, I have my track record behind me, my expectation is I'm going to win.
Yeah. You know, Andy, why I'm a huge Andy Allen fan for many reasons, but one is just you've been playing to win for 30 years, and you right, and I love that your attitude and how you show up is just so contagious and inspiring. I
tell everybody it's the reason. All the sellers, when I'm going, the reason I still work is because I love it. I don't use lockbox. I love the thrill of seeing the agent pull up with their client and knowing they may not know it, but they're buying this house because I'm going to sell them.
I love it.
It's me against them, and I feel like, no, this is what I do. And I'm telling you, it's just like before I'm going to compete at something, my heart's racing. I'm like, let's go.
Oh, that's so good. I love that, Andy. Okay, let's open it up to a couple questions from, and Ruth, I know we are live on our Facebook. If you could watch that, that'd be awesome. Any questions, you can feel free to unmute yourself because we are a nice small group of 22 people. So go ahead and unmute or put in the chat and ask whatever you want. The amazing Andy Allen.
Andy, I have a question. My name's Jennifer Judge. How are you doing? Thank you for talking today. Love your attitude and presence. Very dominant. I like it.
Yeah, I've never been big on subtlety.
No, that's cool.
Never been a
I'm from
straight
New York area, so I get it. Totally love it. What I know you've been doing this for 30 years, but maybe you bring new folks onto your team. What's been the most successful way to generate leads for you and your team?
So farming, without question, has been the most successful. I started out in Wells Branch many years ago because I lived there. And then we lived there 9 years. In the last 3 years, each of those years, I sold more than 50 houses in Wells Branch, and there are only 3,200 homes. So I went to my wife, who is unbelievably conservative. And we're in this little 1,300-foot house that I bought as a foreclosure at Back to the Park. And I go, all right, sweetie, I always wanted to move to something different. And she would always be like, no, this is better than anything I ever lived in. We're staying here forever. And so what I knew was I got one shot with her. I knew if I moved west where the prices were higher, then instead of getting paid X, I could get paid X times 5 or X times 10 for the same effort. And so remember, everything I do, I'm strategic and purposeful. So I'm a sales guy. So my answer is I had to sell my wife. It wasn't an easy sale, I can tell you that. But my wife's an amazing, she's beautiful inside and outside. Like, she is the most amazing person I know. And I got her. So that tells you I'm a really good salesperson.
So yeah, see, I love that, Jennifer. Jennifer just transitioned into real estate this last year from an HR perspective. And, you know, when you're starting out, and I think there's never been a better time to farm. Don't you think, Andy?
No. And so here's the deal, Jennifer, you have the opportunity to sell houses all around the Austin area. So if you're going to be in Cedar Park today and down in Buda tomorrow, and then out in Round Rock, then you have to be an expert of all of those areas when you go on your appointments. Where I work is now out primarily by my house. And it's very easy for me to be the expert and know every house and know everything going on, right? So when you farm, if you're strategic and you farm somewhere where close to home. When I used to do a ton of appointments and have night appointments, the idea that I could have a 7 o'clock appointment, but be 2 blocks from my house, somehow mentally felt like I was already home. It didn't feel like working, right? Like, I'm so close to home, it's okay. If I had to drive across town, it always bothered me. So farming, in the very beginning, taught me, and I learned from a guy who was amazing. He had one neighborhood that he did, and his name was Mr. Millwood, right? Because the neighborhood was Millwood. And he taught me, dude, when I don't have any listings in the neighborhood, I take directional signs out on Friday and I put them on the busy corners with arrows pointing down, even though I don't have a listing. Because he said, I really don't care about picking up a buyer. What I care about is everyone in the neighborhood, when they're leaving that weekend, is going to see my directional sign. Now, that's probably not a really honest thing to do, but at the end of the day, it did tell me, wow, he is super purposeful. This is not that he goes, okay, I'm going to farm this area, so I'm going to send a piece out every month and hope for the best.
Yeah.
Unbelievably strategic and out there every Friday, putting signs out, picking them up on Sundays. I found for me early on in the farms, I would put directional signs out. So, and they wouldn't let us do it other than the weekend. So during the weekday, there wouldn't be anything, but on the weekend, if I had one listing, I might have 10 different signs all around the neighborhood feeding people into that listing. Why? Because I wanted everybody else in the neighborhood to see it. When I started farming Wells Branch and built up my presence there, I had my saying on my flyer that went out every month was something to the effect of the top 3 listing agents for last year in Wells Branch, Andy sold a whopping 78% of the houses. Okay. I can't tell you how many times I went on listing appointments where the person sat across from me and said, I know you sell like 78% or 80% of the houses out here. No, that is not what I said. What I said is of the top 3 listing agents, Andy sold a whopping 78% of the houses they sold. What the person heard, the homeowner, was Andy sells like 80% of the houses out here. So when they were going to hire someone, it was very easy for them to go hire the guy who sells 80%. Yeah. And that's what they believed to be true. Yeah. What I said was exactly accurate. What they heard is what I wanted them to hear.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Good stuff.
Was that in that first year that you got so many in the Wells Branch? Was it, you farmed in the first year already? You had 50 homes sold, or Kim Treadaway on our live stream?
By years 7, 8, and 9,
okay,
I had 50 houses a year I sold.
Okay, by your set, because she said, how long did it take you to get the market share or a good piece of market share when you
Yeah.
start?
So again, like, it has to do with what you're doing, and it's more than just sending out a piece every month.
Right.
Look, I'm a guy who has been very successful, and I do open houses in the spring in my farm, not because I want to meet a buyer. I don't work with the buyers. I have someone usually with me who takes the buyers.
Yeah.
I do that because when the next door neighbor comes in and they want to sell in 2 years, I make an impression. Again, there's nothing subtle about me. My car is memorable. It's painted with badges, and it's 0 to 60 in 3.3 seconds. I am all about having people remember me. If they come through an open house and they're a neighbor 2 doors down, they live in a $2 million house, I got to make an impression. I got to have them remember me. So a lot of my stuff, I have red on my collar. I have red shoes.
Nice.
So I am, but again, I'm strategic and purposeful. I have probably, I don't know, 100 pairs of shoes. I love shoes, but also I do that because in all the videos I do, I always have a different pair of shoes and I talk about my shoes.
I remember you mentioning that.
I need them to remember. There's got to be something that they remember because the world is full of realtors.
Yeah, that is so true. That is so true. Okay, any other questions from you? I see one in the chat here on Facebook Live is Alicia Hooper asked the inevitable question that he touched on a bit. What have you found to be the best objection handlers to where will we go or what could we buy? I have more than a handful of sellers on the fence, and how can I better educate them?
So again, for me, the easy answer to people is if you are okay, if the amount of equity you could put away is enough to justify it, then I would suggest make a double move. I'll help you find the rental right now, and then we'll go back out in the market a year from now, and we're going to find that there's a ton of inventory. At some point in the future, inventory grows, prices come down, and sellers become negotiable, right? So when I talk, and I will say to them, and you guys understand, I don't make money for that. I make money to take you out and hurry and find you another house because that's how I get paid. So this is not a great business decision for me, but it's the truth. If you were someone I genuinely cared about, a family member, if you're selling at the peak and buying at the peak, you're just transferring equity. If you sell at the peak, stack your equity and wait for the market to slip back, well, now you have made money, right?
Right.
And they say you always move up in a down market and you always move down in an up market. Why? Because if values have increased by 20% and you're selling a $2 million house and you're buying $1 million house, well, you've had twice that growth in equity for the same 20%. So sell at the peak. And even though you got to pay a premium for the million, you still come out way ahead. Those kind of things you guys need to understand as realtors. If you're gonna educate your client, then you need to already know, okay, moving up to the bigger house, wow, everybody's taking a hit. Let's sell this one now and let's go buy that big one because it's taken a massive hit. Right? It makes sense for them. Right. You move up in a down market, you move down in an up market.
Right. You make your money on the buy side, right? Like when you people, otherwise I like that you're just transferring the funds, right? From one peak market.
Which is nothing wrong with that. And then the other thing is, for some people, if they're older people and they're retired age, some of those people like to move out a ways, and that we haven't seen nearly as much appreciation when you get way out. So for them, if they're close in, take a big bag of money and then go far out. And you don't have the hustle bustle and traffic of Austin. For a lot of people who live central, Austin has changed dramatically and they are thrilled to get away a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Very true. Very true. Okay. So how about you guys live with us here in the group? What other questions do you have for our
I have a question to Andy Allen.
Go for it.
Go, Alina, go.
So 2 questions. First, can you repeat it again that you mentioned if the buyer says, okay, I need to rent it out for a year. You were so quick about that. So this is first question. When you explain to them, even though you rent it out for years, easier will buy, why?
I don't know that I understand the question. Tell me who the client is. Is it a buyer or a seller of ours?
Buyers. If you're working with the buyers, you mentioned that.
Oh, if we tell them to rent something.
Yes, and how long?
All I'm doing, so Alina, what I'm doing, I'm sharing with them the whole market overview. I'm giving them data. Because if I give them great information and they make a decision, even if the decision in the moment is, we're going to renew our lease, even if that's the decision, then I've counseled them the best that I can. And I feel like I have a client for life. Now it's my job to stay in touch with them. So I give them both sides. Well, at some point, the market will adjust. It can't go like this forever. If that adjustment is in the near future and you buy now, then you're going to look up and go, oh man, we're taking a hit. It's going to be worth potentially less than what we paid. If that takes a long time to get there, it will continue to appreciate and you'll never look back. It won't matter. Even if you take a hit, you still make money. Your option is you can go rent something in the meantime and wait until the market adjusts. And now you have inventory. And instead of going, okay, there are 3 houses and we've looked at all of them and they're all terrible, but each has 20 offers. Let's try to buy the best. You will have lots of inventory to choose from. You'll have sellers willing to negotiate and you'll have lower prices.
Okay.
Again, my answer is not only to come at this from, I have to make a sale, I have to make a sale. My goal is I have to have a client that will use me ongoing, right?
Mhm. Second question I have a buyer who doesn't want, they want to buy now, but they cannot do the appraisal waiver. And I already know they're not, as this market, they're not gonna get into contract. And it's like, look like you're wasting the time, but at the same time, you don't want to tell them this, but how you teach them or how you prepare them to understand that it's, you better do not.
It is exactly what you just did. You sit down with them and you go, here's where we are. And things, and give them, show the data. If they're looking in a certain area, show the data and go, houses are selling for 20% above value. One possibility is we get an aggressive appraiser who understands, look, if you got 20 offers on a house, regardless if it's significantly higher than every other sold, it is the market value because 20 people are trying to buy it at this price. Okay. If you happen to get that kind of appraiser, you don't have a problem with an appraisal waiver. But you have to tell them the flip side is if you get a conservative appraiser who's only looking at sold data, then they're going to come back with a number. If you're under contract here, that number is going to come here. And it's their job to make up this difference. And so all you can do, never accept responsibility for what the market's doing.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Good market, bad market has nothing to do with that. We don't control the market. We do control the information and the guidance that we give people. If you give them all of their options and explain things to them, they'll come to the answer they feel is best for them.
Okay.
I love that. I love that. Great advice. Thanks, Alina, for the great questions. Okay, Victor Nino, you had a question, dear.
Andy, thanks for sharing. Great stuff. And, I have a question. So setting the stage a little bit, you're at a listing presentation, everything makes sense. They want to sell, but they say, well, Andy, you know what? You guys are selling homes real quick. They're not going to be in the market for long. Give me a discount. You're not going to work as hard.
So how would you answer?
That's where I'm caught. I would say,
Victor, that's an easy one. Look, what you have to say is, I give examples. Here's an example you can use. I recently put a house under contract. It's not an MLS. I put it under contract with a buyer. Okay. We'll call it around $1.5 million. That house I could have listed for 1.7. That agent will in the client and the seller's mind, they will think their agent is a rock star because they got them like 1.5 for this house that they thought was only going to be worth 1.3, right? So the answer you give to them is anybody can put a sign in the yard and sell the house right now. But you don't know how many people have left significant money on the table because they don't understand the market and the values. And so you have to talk to them about the strategy is we're going to implement a strategy that says we're going to price it at this point to be able to track plenty of showings. Then I will drive the value up because I'll be communicating with everyone to go, hey, we got these people looking, we've gotten this offer. I'm the one behind the scenes who will be driving that up. And if you think that doesn't make a 1 or 2% difference, this could be a 10% difference to you as a homeowner. This is a much more so than in a really soft market. Right now, we have the potential to really reach out there and do something amazing. If you think some new agent or some agent who's willing to do that for a reduced commission is going to be able to grab you every penny that's out there, and we've never had this kind of money available before, well, that would be a foolish thought. And when I look at them across the table, I promise they're going to look and go, yeah, you're right. You're right. There's way too much at risk for that.
Incredible answer. Thank you.
Just the key is, remember, know your data, right? Know your data. So when you sit down with them, you can look across the table and go, I don't care if you're CEO of what, I know more than you. This is my field. And when you convey that information, you don't want to be wishy-washy. You want to be very clear when you convey information.
You are the expert, right? No matter who
Absolutely.
they are. You could
But
be
Victor, I would tell you, if someone gives you that kind of opening, man, you can do great things with that question.
That's awesome. All right, Victor, okay, Barbara has a question.
So maybe I misunderstood, but you said that you listed it off market at 1.5, but if you had put it on the MLS, you could have gotten 1.7. So why
No,
did
so another agent made it available off market. I brought the buyer in.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So we bought it at 1.5. What I'm saying is I could have sold it at 1.7.
Okay,
And I had no problem telling my client, here are the numbers, here are the houses that I would have used to comp it out, and there's where I would have priced it. And
okay,
that's what I told my client.
that makes sense then.
But the point of that, Barb, was the seller will have no idea that they left that money on the table.
Yeah.
Seller will be referring that agent who potentially cost them a couple $100,000 in the sale. They will refer them to every family member and friend because in their mind, wow, they did awesome.
Yeah.
They don't know the difference,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Such a good point. Barb, did that answer your question or did you have a different question?
No, that answered it. I just misunderstood. I thought Andy was the listing agent.
Oh, he wouldn't have left 200,000 on the table.
I know. I was like, why did you do that? So, okay.
No.
Yeah, he would not do that. All right, who else has a question? We've got about 3 minutes left.
If we don't have any, can I say something?
Yes, please talk.
Okay, so look, if you haven't gotten anything from this today, the one message that I feel like I have to convey is, regardless if you're killing it right now or if you're dying on the vine, this is an industry where if it's important to you, you can succeed at a phenomenally high level, not because you are amazing, but because your competition is not. And because your competition does very little to prepare to be in this industry. If you treat that, okay, so I want you to consider something. You fail at real estate and a couple months from now, you go and take a job somewhere and it's for X dollars per year. And they say you will get here at 8 in the morning and you'll leave at 5 in the afternoon. And you'll get this amount of time for lunch and that's your new world. When they tell you you'll start working at 8, what time will you start? What time will you get there? You're going to get there at 8 because you know you'll get fired. How many of you start your workday effectively working at 8 in the morning? How many of you work through the workday from 8 to 5? I don't care if you call it quits at 5. That's great. But how many of you truly work a 40-hour week? So if you are not wildly successful right now and you're not working a minimum of a 40-hour week, that's not fair.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, so good. Yeah.
Any of you could go this weekend, Saturday and Sunday, go knock doors on a beautiful weekend and say, I thought you might like to know the market here is on fire. Here are the latest statistics. I pulled your tax rate and it's amazing what's happening. And go house to house and say, based on your square footage, here are ones that have recently sold. I thought you'd like to know. Have a great weekend. And then you go to the next one. Well, every now and then you're going to get one who goes, oh my God, is this right? And you start the conversation and you immediately have business. And it's the right business because it's listings. The listings walk away right now. Again, be purposeful. Work a 40-hour work week. How about that? Right? The point I want to make is it's not that difficult. It really isn't. Some of you are a horrible boss. And unfortunately, you happen to be the employee who has the worst boss ever, and that's you.
Exactly.
Deal with that.
Yeah, yeah. And
Right.
Andy, sadly, a lot of people complain about working 60-hour weeks, but in the reality is what was really work, right?
You know what? No. What they do is they hang out for 5 or 6 hours during the day, and in their mind, they're working. What I'm saying is be purposeful and be strategic. Make your list. I'm going to do these things and go knock them out every day, right? And then work an 8-hour day. But it doesn't. I had a partner years ago who would do that. He at one point said he had worked 70-something days in a row without a break. His efficiency when he worked was maybe at 40%. Because the rest of the time he was talking about how miserable and how his life was terrible and, oh, I hate this and this is brutal. And he was a guy who produced a lot.
Yeah.
I learned early on in my career, I am not going to grow up to be that.
Right. Right. Well, you know, it's just so many takeaways today. I'm just like, I took so many pages of notes, but really what I got out of this, Andy, is when we started, for those of you who joined us later on, and I did record this, so I'll post it because I know a lot of people are going to want to watch this. But when I asked you what does playing to win look like, and you started off with balance and having a life, I think that real estate agents have gotten away from that. And so they can learn a lot from you, from efficiency, be purposeful. There are so many nuggets in here, but you, from all of us, we can all thank you. It is just such an honor to be in business with you. And thank you for your time today. You're an incredible person.
Keller Williams for 30 years. How about
amazing, that? Amazing. At the North, that was amazing. And
Hey,
listen,
I have a gold watch. What's going on?
I know, I got to talk to Gary. I'm going to reach out to Gary.
All of you can be wildly successful. I mean that. I mean that.
I love that.
This is an industry you realize you can make more than CEOs. You can make 2 or 3 times what your doctor makes. You can make, and you don't have to have degrees and diplomas and this and that. You just have to have a desire.
Yeah.
And then even if you make a plan that half the things are the wrong thing, if you're doing all of them, half the things are the right things. That will make you wildly successful.
Yeah. That's amazing, Andy. And I don't know if Cecilia has told you yet, but I got on your calendar again for next Tuesday.
Yeah, I heard that.
Did she tell you?
Very tricky of you. You got to agree to one, and in a moment of weakness, you came in for the second time.
You know, I figured it was a double. Like you said, go for 2, right? Go
Yeah.
for double.
No, I
And
told her.
the
She
reason
came to
why-
me and said, "What do you think about this?" And I went, "You know what? I haven't had to do anything for a while. I'm in."
And I'll leave you alone for a little bit after that, I promise. But here's the thing, we've got Brady Sandall, and I'm really excited about the reinvention of Kittaby Luxury. And I think you're such a, you know, our standard now in Austin is over 1 million. And so we're going to be talking about that on Tuesday with Brady. And then I would love to just talk about the luxury market a little bit, because I feel like that's a real untapped market for us that people really should strive to want to be part of.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And as I said to you guys early on, mine was strategic to be in this market.
Yeah.
I didn't grow up in a family. When I go home, I live behind electric gates on an acre with a preserve and a creek and 8,400 square feet with my gym. And and that did not come from my parents, I can assure you. That didn't come from the way I was brought. That just came from me selling real estate.
Yeah. Life by design, darling.
Industry so much. I think, are you kidding? I get to live this way? How did
I did this. You and your wife have such a beautiful life together, and just thank you for the time. And I promise I won't hound you all the time, but you're such a gift to all of us. Thank you for sharing.
No worries. I enjoyed doing it. Good luck, everybody.
Okay, great. Yes, go get them. Let's go play to win.
Go see. See y'all.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, Andy. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks,
Take care.
Andy.